We ran our election as a campaign. Business community raised over $1 million to be able to go forward. The newspaper literally drew the line in the sand. I mean, the newspaper, and there was a newspaper person who was going to be here, Luke, was he? The newspaper stepped up. You go back and look at the editorial page. Ed Manasseh at the time literally drew the line in the sand and said, we're going to stake our reputation on this one. It's now or never. That doesn't mean they didn't kick the out of us on the news side. They were covering the news just like they should. But on the editorial page, in the editorial cartoons, they even went so far as to put a block on the editorial page every day called Fact and Fiction. So things would be said and things would be responded to. You know, they say this, these are the facts. They say that, these are every day. The cartoon that I liked the best was the one they ran with a bicycle. And it had handlebars facing this way that said county, and it had handlebars facing this way that said city. And it sort of left you with a very clear impression that you ain't going anywhere until you get going in the same direction. So the newspaper was fabulous. I mean, there are times when I'm not happy with the newspaper. There are times where I'm happy with the newspaper. The folks who were in favor, and again, who led this campaign? The sitting mayor, Dave Armstrong, the sitting county judge, Rebecca Jackson. One happened to be a Democrat, one happened to be a Republican. The county judge who had lost it twice in the 80s, who is now the senior senator from Kentucky, Mitch McConnell, and myself. We were the four co-chairs to be able to run this campaign. So it was run like a political campaign. It was funded by the major corporations, and the newspaper, which is a major part of leadership and guidance through difficult issues, was on the editorial page there 1,000% and then some. And ultimately, we won 54% of the vote. Interestingly enough, it was 54% inside and 54% outside. In the other elections, the city had always voted for it. Outside the city had voted against it. And this time, it was about the same, almost exactly the same, both inside and outside. Now, there are other communities where you have to win both. Our vote was not that way. We could have lost. We could have lost the city and won enough votes out in the county that once you put them together, it would have won, or vice versa. But some require it to be voted inside and outside. That's something for you to look at as an option. And then we created a strong mayor form of government, which means that the 6,700 employees were hired by the mayor, responsible to the mayor. The board of the Metro Council, the city council, we called it a Metro Council of 26 people. We're a legislative body that okayed the budget and passed laws. But one of the things we sold to our community as we sold this idea was accountability. In our community, basically all the aldermen, the city council people, basically run at large. In the old days, they ran at large, meaning they had to live in the first ward or the second ward or the third ward or the fourth ward. There were 12 of them. But they ran at large, meaning that if you lived wherever you lived, you got to vote for 12. Okay? Does that make sense? And what that did was you could lose your ward and win the election, which is pretty undemocratic. You're the political science major. I mean, there's something un-American about that. Fiscal court was the same way. We had 3 commissioners, A, B, and C district. You had to live in A or B or C if that's where we were running. But everybody in the county got to vote for all 3 of them. And there were instances where the A district commissioner would lose A district and get elected and walk around with a little tag on saying, I'm the A district commissioner, and then people lived in A district said, oh, no, you're not. We didn't vote for you. But B and C liked you for some reason. So we said one of the pitches we made was accountability in terms of saying, hey, we're going to have 26 council members. They're going to each represent about 25,000 people. And they're going to have to live in your district, and you're the only people that get to vote for them. So you will know who your council member is. They will live in your neighborhood, not across town. Nobody across town is going to vote for them. And they'll have to be reflective of of your interests and your desires. So accountability was a major role. So long and short of it was, it ended up passing. We put it on the ballot. We put it on a presidential year ballot, the year 2000. Why did we do that? Because we thought the larger the turnout, the better opportunity we had for it to pass. That was our theory. I can't remember. Somebody did an analysis on things like that, and that's what we determined. And it passed in 2000, and in January of 2003, the new government was created. So it passed in November of 2000, and not until January of 2003 was it created. I would submit to you that was too much time. Should have happened more quickly, not the next day, but it should have happened probably the next year. So we had that 2 years of sort of, actually more than 2 years, almost 3 years in limbo. 2 years, I guess. 2001, 2 years. 2002, and then January, 2 years in limbo. And as they say, the rest is history. I'll conclude by saying that we sold the concept of consolidation, not on saving money. We did not believe that anybody in our community would believe that we would lower their taxes or save them money. So we didn't pitch it that way. We pitched it based on the facts that we truly did believe, and that is, number one, we would speak with one voice, and therefore we would be more effective in terms of speaking out in Frankfurt to our legislature, speaking to business leadership. We would have one voice. We would have one agenda. It would be the community's agenda, not the cities, not the counties, not the east side, not the west side, but the community's agenda. We would have accountability, as I've explained to you, in terms of the elected officials. And we would be more efficient. And that, in fact, did happen in the sense of the savings that we were able to save over time. Startup of a new government cost you on one side of the ledger. You got to paint the police cars over time. You got to create a new badge. You got to get a new patch. You got to do those things. But just the one example I remember was when you took the old mayor's office and the old county judge's office and you merged them together. That year, you saved $700,000. Now, the recession came. The difficulties were here. We didn't have to do some of the more egregious things that many cities our size had to do around the country because the synergies did, in fact, save us money. I tell people I was like Noah on that first day. I had 2 of everything. And so literally we began to save money because I didn't need 2 finance directors. I didn't need 2 public works directors. I didn't need 2. In fact, what we found is that I always use the payroll department as an example. The old county, I think, had 2 payroll people, and the old city had 2 payroll people. And we had a slot open, and we said, we're not going to hire it. We're going to take the 2 and 2, and we're going to run the payroll with 3. But to be truthful with you, within 2 years, when one of the other persons retired, we realized we could run the whole thing with 2. And so through the synergies and through the time that we were able to put things together, we were more efficient. And again, another example we always used was in the old days when we were going to asphalt a road, the city would gear up its asphalt trucks. We'd roll them out onto the road. We'd start asphalting the road to this imaginary line. And then we'd stop. And then we'd tear down the asphalt trucks and take them back to the garage. And then we'd call out to the county, it's yours. And then the county would roll out, and they'd start from that line, and they'd finish it to that next imaginary line called the county line. And you start saying to yourself, and I don't know how apocryphal that is, but the reality is that's a great way for people to understand. If you could do the whole asphalt, if you could do the whole road at one time, it's got to be less expensive. So those were the kinds of things that we talked about: efficiencies, cost effectiveness, accountability, and speaking with one voice with a common agenda. We did not sell it on saving money, lowering taxes, and all those kinds of things. We thought we would be economically more vibrant if we could speak with one voice. We could make deals with one handshake instead of, okay, you've shaken my hand, now let's go over to the county and meet the county judge, and now you got to shake his hand or her hand when it was Rebecca. So that was how we did it, and we've now lived with it for about 8 years, and we're now going through an analysis as we speak. The sitting mayor has asked a group to come back and think about it again, and we'll see what kind of tweaking they think should happen. It's not perfect, and Lexington, Fayette County is different today than we are. Indianapolis I used to have a program in Louisville where I'd bring all the leadership Louisville alumni and alumnae back for a luncheon, and I'd bring a mayor in to talk and challenge them to do something better. And I brought them in from Seattle, I brought them in from Boston, I brought them from Chicago, from Atlanta. And this time, the first year after we merged, I brought in the mayor of Indianapolis, because they merged years and years ago, 30 some odd years ago. And Bart Peters came in, and we began talking as we were walking over to the Hyatt. And he said, you know, I'm just amazed. He said, you merged your police department too, didn't you? And I said, yeah. I said, didn't you? He said, you know, we never merged our police department. I said, what do you mean you never merged? He said, you know, it's only been 34 years. We've never merged our police department. He said, how's it working? I said, you know, we've been in business 4 months. It seems to be working okay. Anyway, make a long story short, he went back to Indianapolis and proposed to merge the police. Failed the first time by 1 vote among the council members. He brought it back up. I'm not sure what he did. And the next thing you know, it passed. And they merged. And so here I was always thinking from the get-go that you had to merge everything from day one, which is what we did. But in fact, Indianapolis never merged their police departments up until 2001. And they merged their communities in maybe 67, 68, 69. And they did it differently too than we did and then Lexington did. They allowed suburban cities to opt out. And I think they still have 1 city that does not vote for their metro council person, does not vote for the metro mayor, and just does their own little thing in their own little enclave. So there are a lot of options out there in terms for you to all look at. And Louisville's one of them, and I hope I've given you a little bit of a lay of the land, and